I probably have $2 million worth of flips right now. Probably the biggest mistake that I see newer flippers going is they're going into too tough a house. As an investor in doing this, you have to be willing to walk away from the deal.
But what are the deal breakers?
The deal breakers.
Welcome back to the Roots Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Max Moore, and I am Tyler Lingle, and we're here to teach you how to plant roots and build wealth. Today we have on Dave Short. Dave Short is just a legend in the real estate investing, flipping space. He has done over 470 flip deals, and he started doing it in 1970. So he's just a flipping master. But he is going to teach in this episode, what are the pitfalls that new investors fall into when they're analyzing flips? How do you build a network that actually brings you deals? So network marketing, recruiting people to essentially be your deal finders, how to fund deals. He set up unique private money, private joint venture deals, and then how he's been able to build a legacy, start a co-working space, and much, much more. So if you want to learn more how to flip in Indianapolis, this is going to be a treat. Thanks for coming on the show, Dave.
Well, glad to be here.
Before Tyler walked in, we were talking. You have 7 properties going actively right now that you're flipping.
Yes.
Tell me about how you've built up to having that many going, multiple crews in those jobs. Are they all under contract, all under construction at once? Or like, how do you layer those out to be able to handle that many properties?
Well, we're pretty good about structuring, the houses and try to lay out. And, typically when we buy a house, I have one GC that I use for most of my stuff, but I have 4 to 5 different independent contractors that do a lot of the stuff that I trust them with value. For instance, I have a go-to HVAC guy. I have a go-to window man. I have a go-to demo and clean out. I have a go-to foundation and basement guy. So typically before I bring my crews in to do the house, I'll have all of their stuff done when they go in. So they can just go in and hopefully on a timely basis get my house done. They can do all the electrical, do the plumbing, install the kitchen cabinets, put them together. I have a countertop guy that does all my work. So we basically try to save time by using specific entities where I'm not paying a GC to hire a HVAC guy to come in. I'm not paying him to do the foundation guy. I'm not paying, to do the countertop. So there's no upcharge on those things for him to manage it with his people.
Yeah, I think that's where people get stuck too, because the GC may hire somebody for HVAC that they think they trust, and then they go in, they do a crap job, and they have to hire a new HVAC guy. So you not only are saving time, but you're also saving money. You're also saving time there.
We save the time because if my contractor brings the HVAC guy in, their work kind of stops while he's doing all his work.
It's like, we'll get in there and get that done once he's done.
It never works out. I mean, I've this GC that I use now, I've fired him twice where he hasn't done any work for me for 2 or 3 months, and then he comes back and I give him a new set of parameters that he needs to do. What most people don't understand when they're doing it with a GC is that guy's probably working on 3 or 4 jobs at once.
Right.
And if he's got 5 people on his crew and he's got 4 jobs, that means I only get 1.5 person manpower per job per week. And that just expedites the time it takes. I mean, it doesn't expedite the time it takes to finish the house. So my kind of rule with him is that if he's got 5 guys on his crew, I need to show up there and he's got 4 guys working.
Yeah. I think it's helpful to know, like, the viewer will be somebody who's looking at you going, 7 going on at once. How do I get 1? And they're trying to take that first one down. That's typically who we're most engaging with. And I know also not only are those 7 happening, but they're all pretty high-end areas, right? They're A-class.
Correct. Most of our stuff, our average sale price this year is probably going to be in the $300 to $350 range.
Yeah, that's great in Indy. Let's go back for a sec. How does that start? What's the kind of first property that you flipped? What are the the numbers on it? What's the area? What lessons learned there?
Well, I mean, you're way testing my memory to go back to my first one. I mean, I think we're on number 470 in Indianapolis.
Oh, wow.
I did not expect that high.
Yeah.
That's from the last 10 years.
So this is your life for the last 10 years.
Yeah, the last 10 years I've been a flipper.
When was your first flip?
Oh, my first flip was probably 1975.
So you might have bought that thing for $15,000 or something.
I can tell you the address. It was 3535 North Biscayne over 38th and Franklin Road.
Yeah.
I paid $12,000 for it, put $5,000 in it, and sold it for $26,000, and thought I had died and gone to heaven.
So the first one was a success.
Yeah,
Major success.
yeah.
Because what we always like to say is your first one's the price of education, and most of the time you don't make a profit.
Right.
For most people I've talked to.
That happens a lot. I mean, with part of our, Tyler, you've been to our mastermind group. I'm not sure why you haven't been back, but you're
It's a
certainly
good question. Too busy trying to do our own, but
Well,
you go back.
I mean, we have a mastermind group, and we have a lot of people who are entry level people that come and visit our group, and then all of a sudden you're a person that's only done one flip or no flips is walking into a room of 10 people that's probably done close to 1,000 flips in Indianapolis. So if you can't get the information there, it can't be had.
Right.
And but on the same token, we all take our licks. We've all taken our licks. I still take licks every once in a while, but we want people engaged with us because I'm like you guys. I mean, we want to bring value to the people that come into our area, into our life on it, and so it. Part of our, like I do a boot camp, and we're going to probably do that boot camp in September. And it's a 2.5 day, pretty intensive A to Z with flipping. And part of the deal with our boot camp is that there's, I tell the students that here's one of 3 ways I want you to look at a flip. And I want you to bring it to me and say, would I do it? I'll tell you yes or no. Would I do it? Then I'll tell you yes or no. And then, would you do this? And I said, yes, I'll do this house. And that's the only one you should buy. Mm-hmm. If I won't do it, and I've done close to 500 houses, why would you do it?
It's funny because at our mastermind group, this is the first year we've headed that up, I asked, what is the biggest downfall in flipping? And Jose, who's done 50 flips, he said, it's getting too emotionally attached and excited. He's like that dopamine rush of, we found a deal and we're in this negotiation process. Then you get in and you're like, I paid 10 grand too much for this house. I didn't negotiate hard enough, or I didn't walk away when I needed to. That's what I notice is one of the biggest pitfalls is getting attached to these properties and starting to envision it without rationally just taking a step back. Does this hit the profit margin I need to actually make a living from this?
Yeah, people are afraid. They start looking at, okay, I can cut the quartz down to granite, or then I can cut it to laminate. But does laminate fit in the price point of the product that you're trying to bring forward? So you can't make that cut. You can maybe make it in a $150,000 house, but you can't make it in a $275,000 house. So you have to figure out what's good and what's bad for you. But you're absolutely correct. They fall in love with the house, and probably the biggest mistake that I see newer flippers going is they're going into too tough a house, meaning that there's too much work there to do. And once you start demolishing interiors of houses, then your cost to finish that house goes up proportionally. The Fountain Square houses, I've done probably 10 houses in Fountain Square, maybe more. And the best I've ever done is a modest profit. And I've got my butt kicked on a couple of them, so it's not I hardly won't drive by a Fountain Square house.
So where's that box? I'd love to know where you've taken the direction of your flipping now that you're 470 in? I think a lot of people would be curious. What is your buy box in terms of what you think has been a successful flip for you?
Well, probably the last 3 years, my buy box has been very successful in houses that's built after 1970. They're not ones where I feel I have to reinvent the wheel with electrical and plumbing, moving walls, demoing drywall. Once you start demoing plaster and drywall, there's just too much underneath these old houses that you've got to look at the people that were living there. They lived with that house for 70, 80 years, or their family has. But if you go into a 60s built house or a 70s built house, they're more straightforward construction, much better techniques than there were back in the 1910 to 1940s houses. And it's because they tend to be more mass produced. So they were after World War II, so they were more production oriented and straightforward houses. So, and it's kind of a rule of, not really a rule of thumb. It's like you look at a house and it's probably an okay house structurally if you think you could move that house to another lot and it just wouldn't fall down.
Right.
And that's a 60s or 70s house. You look at the construction techniques and the things with houses, all these houses could probably be moved to another location and not fall apart. Anything older than that, it's just not going to work on it. And so mine is, I just see the people getting into these houses, and I like you, I get a lot of calls with, well, what do you think about this address? And I said, I don't know how you can win at that address. You can, but the buy box and the stuff that we see from the wholesalers, a perfect example is Riverside. You hardly ever see anything under $80,000 or $90,000 anymore.
Barely get under 100.
And my feeling is the buy is only 50 or 60.
Right.
Right.
You got to buy
homes top out in the mid hundreds.
They top out in the mid hundreds, and people think they can. I get tickled when I see the wholesaler said, "Well, 50." They budgeted 50 for rehab. And I look at the house just with pictures, and I can't get in the house under 50.
Well, these wholesalers have oftentimes never done a flip. They're just guesstimating, kitchen, $5,000, let's call it. Really, that kitchen's going to be $10,000, right?
Right.
HVAC, $5,000. It's like, no, that need the AC compressor and a new furnace. That's
and we priced out because we like to do bigger flips. We priced out custom bathrooms and stuff like that. So I know when I'm going to do a master suite, 4 years ago, I would have put $8,000 to $10,000 on that house. Well, today it's $22,000 to $25,000,
right?
To deliver the kind of master bathroom that I want to deliver.
Is there deal breakers for you when you're analyzing a deal? Like some people I know, they're like, no pools. I'm just not going to mess with pools. Or I know you said pre-1970,
those are not. It's not a deal breaker.
But what are the deal breakers?
The deal breakers are going to be certainly location, but like major power lines behind it, fairly close. If they're extended, I'm okay. If I do them, when I'm negotiating with a seller or another real estate agent, I say, look, I need to take $12,000 off the price because of these power lines. And if I go to the backyard, I'll walk to the power lines. And if you get too close to them and you hear buzzing, then I'm gone. And you'll hear that. You'll physically hear buzzing that you don't know that won't get to the house,
right?
On it, and certainly the backyard. So that's something that that I'll walk away from. Most foundation problems doesn't concern me. We've got pretty good foundation guys that we can go in. Certainly mold doesn't concern us and anything like that, because that's anything that we can fix prior to a buyer looking at it can be fixed at 30% of the cost of if you get that inspection report and you find mold in the attic. We've saved thousands on our flips over the last 3 years is that we make sure the crawl space is right, and we make sure the attic's right. You know, if I have to, in an inspection, they find mold in my attic, the least one of these contractors are going to do that for is probably $2,500.
Yep.
I can do it pre-construction for $200.
Right.
I buy 2 5-gallons of Kilt, so I spray it, and then the inspector walks in. Oh, this has already been treated for mold.
That would have saved me a deal under contract. The guy like literally poked his head in, and it was like, the crawl is good, the investor. And then we come back and we have a quote from Smart Crawl for $8,000 because he didn't inspect the flip. It was a wholesale deal, and there was like no inspections. And I kept saying, "Have you checked the crawl? Have you checked the crawl?" Oh yeah, I stuck my head down in there and it looked dry. Well, the day of closing, it was the rainiest day or the day of the inspection was the rainiest day of the year,
Right.
completely soaked and damp. But they found mold all over the joists in the front part of the home that he didn't look. The deal fell apart, right? He's probably going to contract that price much less than it was contracted for the first time. So it's like,
Yeah.
someone like you, that never would have happened because you know that's a pitfall.
Well, I think that's a good thing to expand upon a little bit, where we're trying to find what on the back end for the retail buyer, because who's the end user? Likely going to be a family. And when that inspector, who's supposed to be pretty objective, gets in and they're starting to have a bad day already in the crawl space, they get up in the attic and they see 3 rodents just chilling there dead for months, and it's like, this house was flipped. How did nobody take it out? You get the bad side of not only the inspector, but what's the retail homeowner going to do? I don't want to live in mold. I don't want to live somewhere where rodents can get in. I don't want to do this, right? And they start getting scared and start, writing these long inspections.
Probably 80% of our flips, I'll not say 100, once we get it done, we'll have it inspected.
You have to.
And I'll have it inspected by the toughest inspector I know.
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't want a guy
We're not
coming
going to
in.
name names, but we all know.
Yeah, because I want to fix the 38 items that will come up on the inspection report.
Right.
Won't get them all, and then there'll be another inspection. And if my inspection's really bad, I typically won't offer it to the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Even though I've corrected everything, they just see the stuff that
Even if you put the invoice, like, here's what we
Right.
corrected,
It's an
here's the
emotional
pictures.
thing. They
Right.
see a bunch of red and be like, oh,
and probably the newest thing, the most important, one of the most important things that new flippers don't do is get a sewer scope. You need to get a sewer scope in every house you do.
Now, especially in Indianapolis, we're getting to that age where if the sewer's not been touched in 20 years, it needs touched.
Or 50 years or 60 years.
Right.
So we'll get a clean sewer scope. But if there's any indication, there's tile and other potential just damage with it, we'll provide a 2-year warranty from Citizens Energy for the sewer line.
Yeah.
It's $560 and it's off our plate.
Utility shield.
Utility shield.
Even on the post 1970 homes, you get a sewer scope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You almost, the neighborhoods we're talking here.
Well, it's roots and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
And typically it's been built to code, but, damage is damage.
Right.
And you don't know how the slab was poured or the crawl or anything. So a sewer scope is $170, $180. You can get them rather than there's people out there that will do them for, for that number instead of the $250 or $300.
The name of the game is not chasing inspection items. Once you're under contract, it doesn't work. You lose. That's where a lot of people lose.
I'm in the middle of one right now, and it's about to drive me nuts. Where, I don't know that the stuff, some of it's unreasonable, but the inspector has made it unreasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very frustrating, and the people, quote, really want the house, and I think they do. But, they bought it direct from us, and I never sell anything direct. And I did this one, and I told the gal when I'm trying to negotiate through it, and I said, one thing that you've kind of ruined, I went against my rule and sold this house to you, and now you're causing me all this grief. And but we're going to work it out, and it's going to be fine. But as an investor in doing this, you have to be willing to walk away from the deal.
Yeah.
So when we send them an inspection response, we send a mutual release and we say, we're okay with you backing out. This is where we're going.
Yeah. You have to do what you can do.
Well, you just have to be willing to walk away from every deal. And then once you walk away from, or they're convinced you're ready to walk away. Then you get your deal together instantly.
Right. Yeah. It's a huge tactic to use there. We have, I work with quite a few flippers that I just butt up against, we're putting it on the market, we get under contract, and I know what's coming in 2 weeks. And I'm like starting to prepare, starting to get my team together to go out and get all my.
Did they do the
quotes.
pre-inspection?
No, they never do the pre-inspection. They never
don't want to pay for $300. $300 is going to save you $5,000 on his inspection.
Without almost every inspection like that saves me $5,000 to $7,000 because I've got work that I can get done for $2,500. But if I have to go to a licensed mold guy or a licensed plumber, my contractor's licensed,
right?
But define license on a plumber, on an HVAC guy, on somebody else. So if they, if I make work and done, I said, well, all my guys are licensed, which they are.
Yeah. I've gotten through to one flipper that I work with, and he started doing that about 6 deals ago. And I can tell you, he's at closing table looking at his profit. He's like, man, we're making more about the $5,000 to $8,000. He's like, how are we making more profit on these? Like, you started doing the pre-inspection. Like, don't forget why we started doing that. So
do you do an inspection when you acquire it?
Typically not. When I do an inspection, this is a great trick. When I do an inspection before I buy, I'm normally either buying it on market with another realtor, and I'm not independently negotiating direct. But with a realtor, I'll normally get an inspection, and here's the reason why. Number one, with a realtor, and God bless them, I'm a realtor, been a realtor for 54 years. But these companies, which are great companies, I work at my licenses at Sheets, Tucker, all the other things. These agents have been put on a rail. They know nothing about our business. And so they know that there's going to be an inspection. They know there's going to be a response, so they're okay dealing with, if the sewer line's bad or if the roof's marginal, that kind of stuff. So you can get stuff, through the purchase that wasn't offered because a realtor's going to say, well, if you put it back on the market, you've got to do this, you've got to do that.
Once you're under contract, you're kind of stuck. And so you got to negotiate all that on the front end.
You got to negotiate
smart.
all that on the front end.
Correct.
And, I'll do, there's a lot of times if I know I'm competing and I'm comfortable with the house and it's as is condition, I may only ask for a sewer inspection, sewer scope, and maybe a roof and a crawl inspection. Because those would be the 3 major items I'm going to look at. And so if these things come in and they get a crawl space doctor out there, does great work, they get, one of the major roofers out there, and they get, they're going to have $30,000 worth of expenses. This is stuff I know I can do for 10.
Right.
So I'm saying, look, give me 15 off and I'll take the house.
Right. Yeah.
So I get all that stuff done.
It's a great trick to get it and to keep it,
because they're used to dealing like that.
Too.
You can get prorated taxes. You can get all the title fees done and paid by the seller, because that's the only way they're trained.
Right. But a lot of them, they're doing 2 to 3. I mean, again, we're real estate agents as well, but a lot of people are 2 to 3, 4, 5 deals a year. That's it, residentially. Right. These agents, as we're.
I think the average deal per agent in Indianapolis is 2.
Yeah. 2.
Yeah.
And that's their living, right? And they're going to fight for that living. It's where it's a little bit different, 2 per week-ish, Yeah.
Right. What I think we tell new investors is that first or second flip, go ahead and get the inspection and pay for that extra insurance if you can and have that inspection period. Once you've successfully flipped a home with a GC, I feel comfortable advising people, walk it with the GC, have a sewer scope, get someone on the roof. You're probably going to be, and use the tradespeople, right? If there's an HVAC.
Well, and it's so easy.
You're probably going to be fine without it because you're replacing so much.
Right. And, a lot of times you can hand an inspection over to your GC and, and just say, hey, I don't want any of these items to appear on my new inspection on the back end. So they've got that going in. They've got a basis for how they do their deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Tyler brought something up earlier, which was like an expected profit or a profit target? Is that how you approach deals, or do you approach it a little bit different? What's the math on the front end?
Well, the math is, I want to, it kind of scales up. If you do $150,000 house, if you get a $20,000 profit, that's a reasonable return for that.
Yeah.
Now but in my mind, to do that house, that needs to be a 30-day turnaround to go in there and get that house done. We just bought one on the east side of town, and it just, literally cosmetic. It had an old furnace and old air, which we'll end up replacing. But literally, we closed last Wednesday, and we're going to be ready for market Friday. Wow. So we're going to be in 10 days in this house, and we'll be 100% on the market Saturday if my carpet guy can get out there and get his stuff installed, which he says he thinks he can. And we will have, painted it, new countertops, painted the kitchen cabinets, new hardware throughout, 2 new vanities, flooring. So, it was just 4 guys working in the house for 10 days.
So it's just kind of like sometimes it's time, sometimes it's money, and finding.
Yeah, I fought that deal to do it because of the money, but we didn't have a lot going. I knew it would be quick. I felt very comfortable with our new price, and I had an investor that had some capital. And I did my capital stack a little different than I do on a lot of deals. My goal was to make 20 grand on the deal. And so I was able to get it in, I bought it for 102, but I got prorated taxes, and I got a $2,000 allowance for HVAC. It's going to cost me $7 to do it, but I got an allowance. So I'm in it at 98, and I borrowed 120 from an investor, and I have to pay him back 126 whenever I close it, no longer than 5 months. So he has a chance to make more than his 12%. Yeah. And then I know exactly what my capital cost and acquisition and rehab cost is going to be. I'm going to be at 126. So if I can sell it, for the 152 that I think the house is going to do, I'm going to be at my $20,000 profit with no hold, no payment, no nothing.
I've seen all across the map here. I know Jose in our group, he's done 50 deals. His is 30. He's trying to make 30 per, but it doesn't take into account the deal size and the risk. Right? If you're making 30, but it costs you $500,000 in debt, I don't see how that's worth it.
Well, it doesn't. When I do big deals, with few exceptions, I do it with private capital. So my private capital stack is that they bring all of the money, acquisition and rehab, and then my private capital gets 40% of the profit.
So you're doing more like a joint venture type of style.
It's a JV, basically.
Yeah, because I was going to say, how do you get somebody to do the rehab? I know a lot of people that'll do but that makes sense because you have the JV. A lot of people lend the house, but they
loan everything. My last big one, my acquisition was $317, and my rehab was $100, and our budget was $122, and we were at $136. So we ended up making 100 and, we made right at 117 on the house. I got 60%, my JV got 40, and we turned that house from start to finish, start to close in 120 days. Wow. And it was a pretty major rehab.
And I'm assuming they want to see some underwriting on what is this going to make? What is that 40% to check to make sure it's beating their other investment avenues?
I have long-term investors, and, we've, in 5-6 years, we've averaged, our worst year was 21% back to the investors on an annualized basis.
Oh, wow.
And
that's great.
And this deal on that we just did, because it's 4 months, so he made I think his annual return on investment was 29% on that deal.
And how did you? A lot of our listeners are going to be super gung-ho about private money, right? They're tired of paying the money, the hard money lenders,
sure.
And going through all the underwriting. How have you gone about recruiting building relationships with your private money?
I think
partners?
relationships is. I was always, prior to that, I was I'll not say a big time real estate guy that listed and sold houses, but we were closing 130 transactions in 1990 on residential side of it. So we were pretty big. So I developed a fairly good network. Your network is everywhere that you go, and it's a matter of, hey, what everybody likes flipping. Everybody likes it. It's
Right.
it's like they have no idea how hard it is, but everybody likes flipping. So, you get to higher net worth individuals by going to Cyria. My two biggest investors that I have today are Cyria members. And they come to me by me teaching a class every Thursday and seeing what we were doing and our thought process. So I got to sell them on my abilities. So, and two of them took my class, my boot camp. And what they learned was that they didn't want to do this. It was too hard.
They're like, I'll just give you the money.
I
And you
said,
do
let
it.
me just give you the money, and you do the transaction.
Your class has been a recruiting tool for your private money.
Well,
like,
it
this
is.
all money goes into this.
Every
This isn't a hobby.
Cyria is. I have a purpose for being there. I genuinely give back,
Right.
but to a point, you almost don't have to ask for the money.
Yeah.
They'll volunteer the money.
Mm.
And it's a stupid story, but I swear it's true. I did a bigger podcast several years ago, and I didn't realize how big it was till I was on it. And then I'm talking to it wasn't David Green, it was Josh. And so he said, well, how do we get a hold of you? And I started giving my number, and he cut it off. He said, do not give these people your number. He says that you will get bombarded. So I give him my email, and I was bombarded. I had 4 guys out of Las Vegas and another guy out of California, and say, well, I've got $500,000 in my IRA. I'll just wire it to you. I said, no, it doesn't work that way. I said, number one, I don't want to know that I want to be your partner, and you don't know how I work. And I said, we can do it. I said, I don't want to do a joint venture with you, but I will let you loan me the money then it was 10%. And if that goes well and you like the way I work, then the next one can be a JV. But you have to do a private money deal with me first, so you know how I operate and you're okay with that. Versus, the guy says, well, my wife really likes it. I said, unless your wife's really pretty, I don't want to meet her, because she can't pick out my colors. She can't do this stuff.
Right.
I do what I do. I have a palette of colors that I
You don't need another active partner.
No,
You
I
just
don't need. I've got my wife as
and
my active
returns.
partner, and she can go to Lowe's and get all the
Right.
stuff, and she knows what we want and the price of the house and that kind of stuff. So, but no, our private money it's just a networking thing.
Right.
A lot of, for instance, if you get I get a lot of my high-end flips from high-end realtors. And it's amazing how many times they'll offer to finance the deal. They'll bring me the deal, and they say, well, I'll give you the money to do it. How much do I make? I said, well, you have to be a private money guy first. So you have to loan it to me at an interest rate, which you'll get. And then if you like the way we work and how it turned out, I'll show you if you'd been a JV, what you would have made, and if you'd been a private money guy. Then you can decide if the risk is, the only difference with risk with me at private money is we'll pay the interest and it's guaranteed. With my private money guys, you're not guaranteed a return, but you are guaranteed your capital back. Mm-hmm. So if things go crappy, I'll let you know right away. And this may not be a good deal, but their capital's secure.
Well, I love that because now you have an army of realtors working to bring you deals because they know I'm going to get paid and have a buyer for this distressed property.
Yeah, I'm looking at 2 in Carmel that are just, well, one of them's in Carmel, one of them's in Geist on the water, and I think I got a shot for both of them. And the realtor gets to negotiate my deal for me. Hey, this is what I can pay. I don't care what you make.
And is that realtor listing on the back end or no? Does that realtor list on the back end?
No, it does not list on the back end.
Okay.
I'm not saying I wouldn't do that.
I'm just curious if that was part of the
my son does all of my listings.
Okay.
And he's a really, really good investor profiled agent.
Yeah.
And so he does the best for me for negotiating.
Yeah.
I'm a lot more willing to walk away from a deal than he is. So he keeps me engaged when I don't want to be there.
Yeah.
When you get that inspection response and you're
and he gets that. I said,
you got to fight.
Yeah, we'll get a low offer. And Brian says, well, what do you think? And I said, just reject it. And he said, well, the agent said that they think they'll buy it. And I said, okay, then.
Right. When I get an offer, it's like, cool, it's a starting point.
Yeah.
Now we got to go to battle. And some people are like,
I will not. And one of the things when you go to battle with a low offer, and a lot of flippers don't realize this because they're so anxious to get it sold. I'm just as anxious as anybody, is that I will not negotiate against myself. So if I've got a $300,000 house and they brought me a $250 offer, if I counter that, I'm negotiating against myself. So I need to get them up to a point where I don't feel that I'm negotiating against myself.
Right. It's like,
so I won't counter those offers.
Going against what you know is true about the house.
Yeah. It's going knowing that I've got a house that should sell for the money.
Yeah.
I mean, almost all my houses, I feel comfortable enough that, early on, I'm certainly not going to be bullied. If I really need myself, I try to put myself into a position where the agent thinks they're bullying me. But they're never bullying me. They're just, they're negotiating within the time frame or the price point that I feel I need to be with that particular house.
You said investor profiled agent. It's going right at the top of my bio. I love that. the way to put it. That embodies a lot, though, right? It's not the retail Aunt Susie agent. It's the agent that understands the cost and value of things within the home. So when you're going to negotiate,
right. Well, I mean, my son Brian, he gets a fair fee, but he's a loss. I consider him a loss leader, meaning that I'm not paying him a full fee, but I'm also bringing him 22 to 25 listings a year.
Right.
So
it's found business.
He understands that, and he gets residual business from that.
Probably helps him get other listings.
Yeah, I was going to say,
it gives him numbers. He's been in the business close to 16 or 17 years now, and he's a really, really good agent. And everybody that other investors and stuff that I recommend to him, where he lists them, then they're really impressed with kind of the work he does around selling their specific property, and he understands their personalities. That they may be deeply underwater on a deal, and he's got to help negotiate them and let them see crystal clear why he needs to do this deal.
Yeah.
Where have you found the most success in sourcing deals? How do you go about that to build that flywheel of constant deal flow?
Well, part of when I first, I've probably done 10 boot camps. The very first one that I did, we had 10 ways to find flips. We spent 2 or 3 hours on that, 10 ways to find flips. Now we spend a half a day on it because we have 45 ways to find flips. So we go over ways that you don't even think about. And I would say over the years, the 45 ways, they got added to the list because I found a house that way on it. And, where one of my contractors who's, pretty brave, he's driving home and he calls me and he said, well, there's this vacant house, looks like it's been sitting there forever, but somebody might be living in there that might be a flip for us because he knows he's going to get the work. And I said, well, go back there and knock on their door and see if they want to sell. And I'll give you $3,000 if I buy it. So he turns his car around, knocks on the door, and I'm in the house 2 days later looking at it. Don't get it bought, but, I had a pretty good opportunity, and it's not an opportunity that, this has been 6 months ago, but it wouldn't surprise me in another month after they went through all the other yo-yos that's out there, they'll call me and said, if you can raise your offer to 170 from the 160, I'll do the deal, So, you get an opportunity to that. And you have to, as a negotiator with properties, you have to always think on your feet. We had one in Carmel that we did 2 months ago, and our buy number was 325 is what we wanted to be. And the guy kept telling me how much money he had. I believed him. I mean, that he, this house it wasn't necessarily matters of the dollars on the house, but it was just that he wanted to sell it. And he said, and he told me, he said, look, my number's 335 or 335. My number was 325. And I said, well, you've told me how much, that you've done very well in real estate, and I can see that. And I said, well, how about if you sell it to me for 325 and then you finance it for me? I'll put $30,000 down on it, and I'll prepay the first $10,000 up front, so you got your 335. I'll do that deal. So I got my number. He got $10,000 more up front. And we end up, the house was too big. We didn't want to flip it, so we wholesaled it and made $62,000. And I called the guy and says, well, we're going to pay you off, and so you have to credit me back $8,000 of that $10,000 interest. Oh, okay. So, we got exactly what we want by just giving the perception that he got what he wanted. And we all got to the same number.
It's the art of the deal, right?
Wow. You're just blowing my mind, just rattling off 60K, 100K deals.
Right.
Well, I don't think, not to say you didn't answer my question, but what are the top 3 sources of deals that you're
my sources deal now are other real estate agents on pre-market.
Yeah. So pocket listings.
And what you've rattled off numbers wise, you're looking at things that aren't necessarily having 10 squatters living in the property, right?
No.
You're looking at things that a retail homeowner has been living there and they're
retail,
moving out.
But it's amazing. Probably 3 of the last 15 deals that we've bought, the house hasn't been occupied between 7 and 10 years.
Wow, it's just sad.
And they're in unbelievably good neighborhoods.
Worst house in the best street, right?
Well, it didn't on the surface didn't look like the worst house, but it was.
Yeah,
I bought one in a Carmel neighborhood, and we got it closed, and the neighbor immediately come out to me and says, "Did you buy that house?" He said, "How'd you buy that house?" Everybody in this neighborhood's trying to buy that house.
Wow.
And realtor connection or something?
Yeah, no, I bought this one through a guy who buys leads. And my deal with him is if he sends us a deal, we buy it, we give him $5,000, and we negotiate the deal, and he gets his money up front.
Well, what you've mentioned now multiple times, you pay the realtors to bring you deals, you pay the contractors that bring you deals, and you bring the deal finder money. So you've basically, instead of penny pinching, I'm going to do it all internal and not pay any marketing. You're just paying per lead or per deal.
I'm paying
genius.
$5,000 to $15,000 per lead.
And on a 6-figure flip, at $600K, that's easy money.
The last one I did with the one at Geist, and it was, the realtor sent me the lead, and it's in Geist, great neighborhood, and we're talking, and he said, well, this is kind of the mess. I'm looking for this. I said, why aren't we talking about flipping this instead of you doing this? It's in an estate. The people are in Illinois. They have no emotional connection to the house, and it's in early stages of foreclosure. So there's just a lot of puzzles. I said, why aren't we flipping this house? I don't know. I said, well, let's find out what the number is. And so he found out the number. It was 302 was his number, was the number the people wanted, would take. And I said, so your fee on top of that is 3%, I'm assuming. Well, wasn't going to ask for that much. And I said, well, if you're bringing me this deal, I'm okay with the number. So the number was 317. I bought the house for him, and at the closing, I give him his 15, and he's out of the way. So,
but that guy's pumped to bring you the next one.
Oh, right. He's already sent me one. We're looking at one tomorrow.
Yeah, that's huge to have.
Well, and then I call the guy. We close it, and I call him, and I said, "Hey, I got your check for the 15." I said, "What if I brought you $100 bills? Would you take 12?" He said, "Man, my wife wouldn't know about that." He said, "Yeah, I'll take 12." So now I have to go to the bank instead of write a check. And I got him 12,000 worth of $100 bills. And we had lunch, and I said, well, you got the money, so you got to buy. And so he took the 12,000.
Saved $3,000.
So you just took it off title. Basically, the commission was off title.
Oh, yeah. I never put anything on title. At the title company, I pay him outside to close.
Yeah, right. Better for them.
It's better for them. It doesn't matter to me, but it's better for them in regards to the seller, so they don't see that they're making $15,000. All they have to tell the seller is that guy's taking care of me.
Yeah, that's huge. I think the two key components that you have there, it's not only the deal finders, but also having the capital to go after it. Because where people get stuck on the first one is, oh, now I got to go and find the hard money lender. I finally found the deal that works. That's went through 7 daisy chain wholesalers, and they're paying $20K extra plus 1.99% in origination fees if they're lucky. Probably more like 4.
Right. And we've done with wholesalers.
It's hard to make money that way.
It is hard to make money that way, but if the guy has got a really good deal, he can bring it to Syria and find a partner. He may, like if he brought it to me or somebody else, he might have to make it more of a learning curve where he gets 25% of the deal.
Right.
And he gets to do some of the work. So he gets to see a hands-on thing. And then, maybe my private money guy's getting 30, I'm getting 35 to walk him through the deal. But he takes that deal off my plate too.
I think that's huge to get that gateway. That's
well, and I help them. So many of these guys, you help them. And, when you get into their deal, it's a bad deal.
Right. Yeah.
You shouldn't. I said, you shouldn't do this deal.
Well, that's the number one thing that I get reached out for is I want to buy flips. I want to buy burrs. That's what everybody's calling and telling me. And I in the phone calls, like, I don't have an agent on my team who's going to drive around the properties to make $1,000 to go through the whole 30 days and to go through the hard money lender. There's nobody that's going to do that. Right. And if there is, they're the brand new agent right off the block that has no idea what they're doing. And I'm going to be transparent and say that. You got to go find your deal sources. You got to go find your funding and put it together. We'll certainly give our opinion on value.
Right.
But it's running a business.
The funding on private monies or private lenders versus maybe private money is you have the difference with private money and private lenders and is what you can negotiate. For me, I probably have $2 million worth of flips going right now. And I can't afford to pay $20,000 a month in payments.
Right.
I can't do it.
Right.
So I got to bring in a JV because I can't expand because I don't have the capital to do that. So it makes it so much easier.
Well, now you're just paying based on performance.
I'm paying on performance.
For everything. Which is much more scalable.
It's much more scalable. So you can do, multiple numbers with a track record if you can, you can outsource your own deal. And, all of my network marketing goes to the fact I don't want to sit in front of the seller that's worried about the dollar. I want to sit in front of the seller that's worried about the convenience. Mm-hmm. I live in Denver. you've got to look at all the psychological aspects that goes into negotiating with these kinds of sellers. Is that, they're in from Denver and they're at their parents' house and it's just full of crap. Nothing's been done for years. The kids haven't been home,
They don't want to deal with that. Yeah.
they're embarrassed.
Right.
They want to eliminate this problem as quick as I can, and it's not about the money. And it's like when you can sit with them on a Monday and they're going to leave back home on Friday and they're getting the stuff that they want, and now they're looking at a clean out, they're looking at an auctioneer, they're looking at some, anything that goes there. And if you're sitting in front of them and say, if you'll take $250 for this house today, take all the stuff you want, you never have to come back, I'll close Friday. So they're leaving with their money 5 days, and they're thinking they're already planning 3 trips back. They're looking to their agent to get them a demo, and the agent's sitting there and says, this is really a pretty good deal based on what we've been talking about. And the agent says, take it, and then she gets her money, they get their money, and my demo crew are in hog heaven trying to pick through the stuff that might go on Facebook.
Getting the Facebook Marketplace grind.
I mean, there's been a couple times when I've had stuff that's really probably had some value to it.
Probably does.
And I'll look at, if I think there's value to it, I'll tell my gal that, this is a 5,000 clean out. I want you to do it for 3, and I won't, we won't try to pull some of this stuff out and sell it.
Right.
You can keep it all.
Or if it's junk, I know I don't want any of it.
Yeah.
I'll just say, okay, I want you to start your clean out on Wednesday. You got Monday to Tuesday to take anything out of your house, but I don't want to pay you to clean out stuff to sell.
Yeah.
So I get 20% of my demo done for free.
Yeah.
Or my clean out, and then they come Wednesday, and they're
probably just post the house on Craigslist and say, "Come take it. It's free."
Well, you probably could, but
you might get people.
Who knows what you're going to get there,
right?
But yeah, so we're looking for that seller that it's about convenience more than it's dollars.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think when you get to the psychological part, you play the game 450 plus times, right?
Right.
You get there. Thanks for coming on, man. We have a couple rapid fire questions to wrap up the episode. The first one is, what's a habit that's changed your life?
A habit that's changed my life. Well, that's a tough question. I've never been asked that one. I'm very disciplined.
Yeah.
So being very disciplined has really helped my life. And I do a lot of things that people might think I'm scatterbrained in some of the stuff, but I get a lot of stuff done. I mean, I can spend all the time I want with my family. I can get these flips done in a timely basis, reasonably close to budget. I can play poker every weekend. So I'm structuring my life to, I need to be effective in 35 to 40 hours in my flipping business because I've got too much other stuff that I need to be a part of, whether it's poker, whether it's golf, whether it's my wife, whether it's my grandkids. So those are all extremely more important to me than they were 5 years ago.
Yeah. I love that. Making time for the life things.
Yep.
Right. Having the boundaries.
Yeah.
Well, poker is my get away from this stuff.
Yeah.
Where I can not even think about it at all.
Yeah. That's like pickleball, golf for him. For me, it's like being competitive
golf
about.
Used to be that way, but poker has kind of taken over golf, even though I still play some. So.
Yeah. I imagine you're a pretty good poker player.
I'm reasonable.
Yeah.
Reasonable.
Yeah. Next question for you is what is your favorite go-to dinner spot in Indy?
Tiburon in Fishers.
Okay.
It's a high-end seafood and sushi, and they have a nice steak if you want it. But that's probably that. And Harry and Izzy's for lunch is like the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great steaks.
Yeah. Great.
So are you a Fishers guy? You live
I am.
Okay.
McCordsville Fishers.
Geist or?
I'm out at 100 off Oleo Road, 96th Street.
Yeah.
That's a great location. What's an area of life you're focused on growing?
We haven't talked about it at all. Not that we needed to. Is 4 years ago, I started a co-working space in an event center on the east side of Indianapolis. It's a beautiful space. I think we've done a great job with it. But I had everything in the world I owned in that space because it was going to be my legacy and my retirement, and COVID hit. So I wasn't able to lease or do anything with my event space other than pay investors for 2.5 years and losing in the tune of $30,000 a month for a long time. And I made the decision that I had a lot of private investors in this deal, and my attorney and some other people told me I just need to shut it down. You can't make it work. I said these are little guys with a lot of money in it, and I said I have to be broke before I make them broke. So the last 3 months we've made $147,000 net in the event space business.
Wow.
Going from 30,000 negative, but the integrity kept me there. And so now I want this to be, I'm past I've got it up the hill. Now I can start rolling where,
Wow.
As little as 8 months ago, I had no idea if I was going to make it.
The first time we talked, I think it's because I saw a post you had on Bigger Pockets about selling it or like.
Well, I hadn't even started it when I was on Bigger Pockets.
Okay. It was somewhere.
Yeah. I've got some investors that may make me, may force something, but we're working through that and we'll get it done. And, and the other thing that I would always want to put out to other investors that we cover in Bigger Pockets is pick a rail, maybe two, and stay on it.
Yeah.
And treat debt appropriately.
Yeah.
Investors do not treat debt appropriately.
Right.
So that's probably the biggest thing that if I look back, I did wrong. I didn't treat debt appropriately.
Treating it as leverage as a tool.
As a leverage as a tool versus just keep going on and on because you
Stacking
can
and
leverage.
stacking.
Yeah, just stacking.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Doesn't mean you can,
Yeah.
you shouldn't.
Because the spreadsheet's like the cash on cash is here. If you get more debt, it's like, well, it's okay to own that property in cash.
Right.
It's okay.
And and investors in our business will get the feeling of not having cash. And that's not a good feeling.
No, it's not.
It's not a friendly feeling.
Right.
And
What's funny is when you feel it, what do you go to grab? You go to grab more.
And it's like, I've got a nice equity in my house, but I don't want to use it.
Yeah,
but you have to be willing to do it if you're going to be in our business.
Yeah, at times.
At times, so, but just, treat it appropriately.
Yeah.
I love that.
I think the investors that have been doing it the longest, they always say, keep your powder dry, right? Keep a large pool of liquidity because it helps you sleep well at night and be able to leverage, right? So it's leverage with margin. I think it's a great place to jump off. I know you have a mastermind group and you're very involved with your Irvington event space. Where can people find out more about you and what you're doing?
Well, my email is dshort@c21sheets, SCHEETZ.com. You're welcome to reach out to me on my cell, 317-590-4499. But just in closing, our mastermind group meets every other Monday at the Irvington Event Center. And to be a part of that, you need to be in my Irvington space, which is $129 a month.
It's great value.
It's a great value, and you're around. It's a small real estate incubator, and on any given day, you'll find so much talent in that room that's willing to share with you.
Yeah. Well, I think you've built quite the legacy for yourself. I mean, you are very well respected in the Indianapolis real estate community.
I appreciate that.
And I think it's a testament just like what you did with sticking through the Irvington Event Center and how you built your business and profiting others through that is just incredible. So
Good.
thanks for coming on the podcast, man.
Okay, enjoyed it.
Appreciate it.